cutting at the top.
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot of agreement from us, and I'm going to agree a lot with Albert. I think the cutting needs to be happening at the top. It is really unfair to cut at the bottom. And I will tell you that when I meet payroll every 2 weeks at my business. And if the money is ever not there, and I've been very successful in business, I'm very lucky, knock on wood, but I will tell you, if the money's ever not there, I'm the one that doesn't get paid, not my employees. They always get paid. And it's just not fair. It's just not right that when money is short, they always want to go to the bottom. Second of all, the first place I would cut is those travel junkets. Why in the world do they have to go all over the place? When we have a federal program right here, they have an office in Coral Gables that does this federal program. Why do we have it repeated at the county for them to take these travel trips all over the world? In addition to that, there's plenty of other places where they can cut, including some of these fancy cars and other places where they can cut, and there's plenty of other places. So I could go on, but you said my time's up.
Your time is up. All right. What is the situation with Homestead Air Force Base, and what would you propose for that facility? Who'd like to take that one on?
We've had some issues where encroaching development has actually put the future development of Homestead Air Force Base, the return of it as a base, in jeopardy. It's yet another bad effect of overdevelopment. You know, if you have an air base, you need to make sure that you have certain setbacks of development around the air base. And what has happened in recent years is encroachment into those regions, which could then make it easier to target Homestead Air Base when there is a committee in Washington, D.C. looking to reduce expenditures for things like bases. It's another reason why we have to be really careful about overdevelopment. Does it make sense to put a commercial airfield at Homestead? It's one of the places where I was very much on board with Katie Sorensen. I would say that I've been with Katie for 12 years on environmental and land use decisions, but I agree with her that her strongest point was to say, no, we don't develop an air base in between two national parks. Develop an airport.
We do have an airport there. We need to protect it. National security is one of our greatest priorities. It's also an economic stimulus for the area and a source of area pride. But, you know, we recently had a county commission that basically approved the residential development right off Kendall Tamiami Airport. And I believe, if my memory serves me correct, they actually had a park designated in one area for a designated crash zone. Well, you know, that's wrong. And I'm standing before you as probably one of the few public officials who's actually had the strong will to vote against things that he did not feel were right. And I can see the way the money's going in this race that people recognize that, and the money's not going my way. The airbase, again, you're talking about, it's almost like a constructive eviction. If you build enough around it, you do render it useless, then you might as well plow it to save it, and that's not what I want to do. We need to preserve it for the use it is.
We were very fortunate to live in this community that it is so precious, but it's also a very strategic location. Homestead Air Force Base serves a great strategic location for our homeland security. I think that Homestead Air Force Base needs to come back as a military base, full-fledged. Military jobs generate civilian jobs. It generates neighborhoods. There's a whole stretch of Homestead Air Force Base that has built-in infrastructure that housing can go in, where the officers used to live. Homestead Air Force Base, right now, there's a federal project in place, funding to build a $60 million facility for Southcom's special ops. Congressman out of Texas is trying to kill that bill in Washington so that project gets moved to Texas. That, as a county commissioner, I would fight.
I think the base needs to be protected, and I'm going to give you a little history as to when this was protected, when they tried to make it into a commercial airport. Katie could not get anything done through the commission. She did not see the votes there, so what she did is she actually ended up going to Washington and asking for help through her connections in Washington. And that is one of the things that I bring to the table as your future commissioner. I do have connections in Washington where I feel that we may have to use those again, because what's going to happen is we are going to have again county commissioners that are going to go the route of the developers and try to kill the base, and we are going to have to do it the route that Katie Sorensen used again, and we need a strong commissioner that's going to go around them to keep the base. Thank you.
This next question has to do with annexation and incorporation. Do you support the current incorporation legislation that requires 25% of registered voters' signatures on a petition before an incorporation process is instituted? And everybody jump up at once. Mr. Aaron Alvarez.
Yes, thank you. I was part of a committee that studied incorporation of East Kendall. And for the entire process, I stayed even-handed. And at the end, I ended up thinking, you know what? There could be real advantages to incorporation. But at the same time, I saw the way the process went. It was truly not as democratic as it should have been. It's possible right now to incorporate an area and be left with a schism between those who are pro and against. And it's a really tough way to start creating a new city. I think that the 25% rule is not as important as the 50% rule for deciding who actually gets incorporated, a 50% plus one vote. I think it's more proper to look at 60%, to say if you're going to incorporate, let's see 60% of the voters who show up on that day. Remember, this is not 60% of the citizens, given how we attend our elections. 60% of those folks who show up vote in favor. I think that if I started a community that way, it'd be a lot easier to get everyone buying in.
I sat on a municipal advisory committee in Lennon, and we took the leap, and it's turned out to be a very wonderful thing. Some of the criticism was that we were balkanizing Miami-Dade County. I think through the incorporation of these separate areas, Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, we found strength in numbers to work together on more projects and energize things. We're working together on projects along with Commissioner Switch's office, like the FP&L power lines, that I think if we were just largely unincorporated, would be going nowhere in the fight, because the county commission won't take up the fight for the unincorporated area. It's the municipalities that's leading the fight. I'm a big believer in a democratic process, and I believe that areas should be, I don't think it should be forced on them, and I don't think it should be unfairly kept from them. I think there needs to be a very fair process, but that process needs to be fair. It shouldn't shove it down anybody's throat, and it shouldn't prevent any area with the drive for it to do it. I'd like to take a look at it and let's see what the rules are, but I haven't heard a lot right now on the incorporation during the campaign. So,
Time's up.
I think that whether it's 25% or 50%, I'm not here to judge on the rulemaking, but I'll tell you what my vision is. My vision of Miami-Dade County is not for it to be in the municipal business. I think that all unincorporated area, that I commend the mayor for his job in Palmetto Bay, should be incorporated. And we should do the similar process as in Broward. Give out a timeline, whether it's 10 years, and say either incorporate or be annexed. And that way it takes the county out of the municipal and zoning business. And we look at the regional government that it should be, look at those regional services as public safety, transportation, the airport, seaport, healthcare, and so forth.